Hey, Ashley. Happy first
Hey,
Friday.
happy first Friday to you.
So I'm really excited because, I live in Austin, Texas, and it's been so hot. It's just so hot all the time. And my wife and I, Missy, we love this music festival called ACL, Austin City Limits. It's like the big thing we do, every year. And so it starts this weekend. And so we're going to go actually, once I'm done with this, we're taking a half day, both of us from work, and we're going down. And let me tell you what happened, Ashley. Today, in Texas, we have a high of 78 degrees. Oh, it's amazing. So we have it's October, it's beautiful blue skies, about to go listen to some live music in like 78-degree weather. I just can't believe it. So I'm excited to be here with you. But I hate to say it, it's kind of second place excitement because I'm mostly excited about this 78-degree weather. How's everything? Are you now? Because in Georgia, it's October. I grew up in Georgia. I would
Yeah.
assume that leaves are looking beautiful. The weather is beautiful. Talk to me. Give me a weather update. Let's get the weather update
Okay,
before we
weather
start with our
update
stuff.
from Atlanta, Georgia. Lake Lanier, Georgia, is the leaves have not started changing yet, which I'm
Okay.
glad for. It's we've had some beautiful blue sky days lately and some warm weather. I would say in the 70s to low 80s.
Okay.
I actually water skied on Monday and yesterday.
Okay. In a wet seat, I
So
hope.
no, it's the water's not cold enough yet. The water was 80
Wow.
degrees on Monday. It was 78 degrees yesterday. So it is getting cooler. This weekend, I think we're going to have a low of in the 40s or 30s overnight. So
Okay.
that will make the water temperature go down quickly. But I'm going to keep skiing as long as I can.
I
So
love it. That's
yeah,
great.
it's great.
Okay. Well, now that we've got now that our weather.com update is done, let's go ahead and hop in. Here we go. All right. My favorite question. Can you see my screen, Ashley?
I can see it, Parker. Looking
Perfect.
great.
All right. Let's go ahead and start from the beginning.
Okay. Yeah,
Okay.
today
So
this is
go.
exciting stuff. We usually talk about some a little bit more complicated things, and we thought I think you and I were talking the other day, and we were like, we should probably do a webinar for first time home buyers.
Yeah, yeah.
And as we were thinking through all the things we could talk about, we realized that this is actually going to be two webinars, a two-part series. So this is
Yep.
today's, but we're excited to help with these first buying your first home, things to consider and know about.
We were a lot like J.K. Rowling when she was writing the final Harry Potter book, Deathly Hallows. We were just like, this probably should be two, but we're going to keep it as one. And then when they adapted the book, right, it was two movies. And I would argue that I kind of like splitting it up. I feel like it too. So we learned from J.K. Rowling's mistake, and we've decided to split this up into two parts. Gives us more content, but I do think that this will be helpful. And also, I think what Ashley is trying to say is that not a lot of math in this one. We had real heavy math. We had real heavy math ones, which were great. But let's
Yeah.
get rid of some math and have some fun.
We've got a little math in this one, but it's easy math and it is fun math. So I think you guys
That
will have a good time.
sounds great. Okay, so welcome, welcome, welcome. If you have any questions, please make sure you put them in the box. Ashley and I will answer those at the end. And I want you to meet Ashley Smith. Usually we'll just kind of go right over this slide because we've been doing First Friday for over a year now, or right at a year, because there's something different about this slide. Ashley, you want to point out what's different about this slide?
Yeah. So, hi everybody. I'm Ashley Smith, and if you don't know me, I love helping people make their dreams come true with real estate. I consider myself a dream maker, and that's why my company is called DreamSmith Realty. But just recently, this week, I made a big decision to change my broker, and I'm now working with Keller Williams in their luxury division. I'm really excited about it. They've got a huge international presence, and I know they're gonna be able to help me grow my business even more, especially from all the levels, but especially on that luxury side. So yeah, I'm excited to announce that.
Awesome. I'm excited for you. I know that any major decisions you make, whether it's your personal life or for your business, I know that they're never impulsive decisions. You really will think through all the pros and cons. So I know this decision did not come lightly, but I'm so excited. I can just tell that this is going to be a great move for you.
Thank you.
All right. And Ashley, y'all, she really is a dream maker. She's got all the bona fides, she's got the credentials, but I've seen her in action working with clients, and she does make dreams come true. Um, so yeah. And then just again, because we might have some folks who this will be the first one that they've ever seen, especially since we're going to be sending this out to our first time home buyers. Who are some of these wonderful people in these pictures, Ashley?
Oh, sure. So on the top left corner is my dad, CL Smith. You guys, if you watch some of our past webinars, he's been a guest on some of our webinars. I've known him my whole life. He's a great guy, and he's one of the reasons I got into real estate. He's had his real estate license for a long time and has taught me everything I know, and I still give him a call and ask for advice a lot. He's a great negotiator, and when I love to travel, that's some of those pictures on the top right hand side. I think there I'm in Spain on a biking trip. So when I'm traveling, he's able to fill in for me for my business, which is awesome. I don't have to worry about going on vacation or taking time off.
Awesome. That's great. And then how about these folks down here?
Oh yeah, those are some of
Bottom
my
right.
friends from my Leadership for Forsyth class. I had the great opportunity to be a part of a leadership program in Forsyth County, where I live here in Georgia. And so we went out to lunch one day together after our program was over. And this picture is supposed to represent me being a foodie, although I'm surprised there's not just pictures of all the love of food, all the food I love to eat there. Um, but those are some great women doing some great things in the community as well.
Awesome. That's great. Thank you for sharing. All right. And then my name is Parker Couch, producing branch manager at AFN, or American Financial Network. Former teacher, principal. This is my family, a little bit blurry, but that's Carlos, my wife and I's godson. That's our oldest daughter, Marley, and our youngest daughter, Evie. And we are excited to bring to you a guide to buying your first ever home. So here is our overview of what we're going to share. One is we're going to share our top reasons to own a home, then common objections to buying a home, then key terms to know when buying a home, and then we're going to give an overview and end with the home buying process. And part two, not to spoil it, we'll be going more into detail about that process. But first, let's talk about the top reasons to own a home. Ashley, take it away.
Well, I don't know about you, Parker, but the first time I owned a home, I was in my 20s. I think my whole life I had lived with my family or in a dorm room with people. And so it was really nice to own a home that was really just my own, something I could take care of, something I could decorate however I wanted to, have people over whenever I wanted to, and whoever I wanted to. So that was pretty nice. Having that space that's like your own and defines you is pretty a fun reason to own a home, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I do know the first house that Missy and I bought when we got married, we were renting one side of a duplex, and it was an older building in Memphis, and like we could literally hear our neighbor who was in the same building duplex, that we could hear when she would like scoot her chair back. So I do remember like, okay, it's nice to actually have our own place. But I think for me, top reasons to own a home, if I'm had to pick from these four options, it really is stability, both financial stability as well as an investment. You can almost put stability slash investment, where you're investing in your future and your family's future. And we'll get more into why it's such a really good financial investment later on.
When we do
Um,
our math.
that's right, when we do our math. All right, so we also have four other reasons, so collectively eight of top reasons to own a home. Which one of these four additional reasons stick out to you, Ashley, and why?
Well, and you just mentioned the financial investment, which if you wouldn't have, that probably on this page would be the most important thing to me. The main reason I bought a house when I was in my 20s, which was by the way, a stretch. It was not easy to do, but the
Right.
reason I did it then was because I knew it could help me grow my assets and help me grow my net worth in a way that just investing in the stock market or putting some money aside for retirement wouldn't be able to do. And it kind
Yeah.
of balances your investments as well. So for me, that was my number one top reason to own a home and continues to be.
Yeah, that's great. I think for me, the idea of community is really interesting. When Missy and I bought our first home, we bought on this street, Parkway Place, which, if you're familiar with Memphis, was right across the street from the bike arch at Overton Park, and it was a dead end street. And for the folks who owned homes on that street, which every single home was owned by was owned owner occupied, there was such a pride in that street. The nickname was called Peeway Place. There's still like a text group of all the owners and it was such a diverse group of folks. You had folks who were in their 80s, you had folks who were in their 20s, and that was a part of home ownership that I didn't realize was going to be special, which is once you buy somewhere, not every time, but usually when you buy somewhere, you're going to be surrounded by other homeowners. And the decision to own a home is a decision to invest in your community, the people that you're literally living right next to. So that's another reason why I think owning a home is really great.
So true. I
Um,
love that.
so now that we got all the warm fuzzies out of the way, let's talk about some common objections to buying a home. So objection number one, I need to have a 20% down payment before I buy a house. Ashley, you're a realtor. How often do you hear this, or have you
Oh,
heard this?
I hear it all the time. And actually, before I got to know you and some other lenders really well, I kind of told people that too. I mean, I know they don't need to have a 20% down payment, but I was like, I
Right.
think it's going to be best if you do. And as I've gotten to know how the market works and mortgage, how the market works and how the mortgage lending works, I found that that's not true. So I'd love for you to kind of share why that is with everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. So one, this objection, it's a common and really costly misconception. I think first, folks need to realize that today's median down payment is actually only 13%. And without getting too in the weeds, here's the main thing I want you to realize about 20% down payment. If possible, a 20% down payment is great. So this is not us knocking a 20% down payment. At the end of the day, it's you owning a greater equity share of your home. That being said, you have to realize that we as American citizens, as global citizens, we borrow money all the time, whether it's swiping a credit card or taking out a loan for a car, but we're borrowing money all the time to buy things that by their very nature depreciate or go down in value, right?
Yeah.
Versus real estate, at the end of the day, there is only so much land. Is only so many resources. It's not a made up thing. Real estate is something that is a fixed resource, which means it's inherently more valuable than something that can be infinite. And why is that important? It's because, yes, a mortgage is debt, but it's one of the only times in your life that you will take out debt to buy something that's going up in value, right? And so the big thing that I always tell my borrowers is, hey, how much money can you put down? And that question and the answer to that question is sometimes different than how much money should you put down? And there are a lot of factors that go into that. But at the end of the day, just getting in the game, whether it's you doing a 0% down payment, 3%, 5%, 10%, 20%, 40%, doing what you can to get in the game is the most important thing. Because I heard a borrower express this to me this week, actually. And I was kind of being apologetic for the interest rates going up. And she goes, you know what? I've rented my entire life. And so as far as I'm concerned, my interest rate has been 100%. So a 7.5% doesn't really bother me that much. That was a really interesting way of looking at it. It's like I've been paying a 100% interest rate by renting my entire life. So that was really,
Right.
really cool. Now, the benefits of a 20% down payment, Ashley, I know that you were somebody who used to really herald, like, you got to do 20%, and now you can see both sides. But there are some benefits. So kind of talk us through some of the benefits of a 20% down payment.
Yeah, sure. So, unless there's like a great package or deal that your lender can work out with you, generally, if you put down 20% compared to a lower amount, your interest rate's going to be lower.
Yep.
Which, I don't, Parker, that would be a question for you. What would be the difference in an interest rate? But sometimes that difference might be, $25 or $50 a month payment difference.
Yeah.
So it's really not a huge deal if you're okay not getting that extra 3 lattes each month,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, for sure. Or if you do got the extra
Um,
$50, then you can always do an additional principal payment. So you kind of turned your interest rate into the interest rate you would have gotten if you had done 20% down. So that's a great point.
oh, yeah, and that's a good point too. Kind of ties into the second bullet point here. If you have put 20% down and then you actually have some extra money, you could, well, if you put 20% down, you'll probably end up paying less over the life of your loan if you are only paying mortgage payments. But
Yep.
anytime you can add payments on top to that principal amount, you're going to end up paying less over the life of your loan, which is awesome. From a real estate perspective, okay, you're thinking about buying your first home. If you can put down 20% and someone else is only going to put down 3 or 5%, it can help your offer stand out to the seller.
Yep.
And then lastly, you're not going to have to pay private mortgage insurance, which again, sometimes is usually just a few extra dollars, maybe $100 extra a month. But if you don't have to pay it, then why would you pay? That's
Yeah.
money you can use for other reasons.
It's kind of like a have to payment versus a can do payment. Um,
Yes.
yeah, that's great. I couldn't, nothing else to add. Now I will say for first time home buyers, the median down payment is 7%. And then you've got some loan options like FHA. We can put as little as 3.5% down. You can also put as little as 3% down if you qualify for one of Fannie or Freddie Mac's affordable home loans. But here's the bottom line. Don't let the down payment myth of you having to have 20% down. Don't let that stand in the way between you renting versus you becoming a homeowner. Here's another objection though. Doesn't renting make more financial sense in this market? Well, let's talk a little bit about that. That is something I've been hearing. Ashley, have you been hearing that?
Yeah, definitely. And I think Parker, you can probably speak better to this than I can, but even Realtor.com just put out a article
Mhm.
about a week or two ago about this. Like, you should rent instead of own. But we really believe that renting might make more financial sense in the short term. But if you're looking at real estate as a long-term investment, even a couple of years or more investment, then home ownership usually is almost always going to make more financial sense for you.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. I think that the Realtor.com article was interesting on, and if you look at it within a specific vacuum, it it does make sense. And here's why it could make sense within a very specific vacuum is that vacuum is money that's going out the door or out of your checking account when you write that rent check versus a mortgage check. What's happening is because rates are going up, rent hasn't quite caught up to these, rates, these higher interest rates. And so if I bought a $400,000 house, my mortgage payment might be 3,200 versus if I am renting that same exact house, my rent payment might be 2,800. So in that vacuum, you're like, gosh, I could save $400 a month by renting that house versus buying that house. Well, let's first off talk about why the mortgage would be more. It's not just the interest rate. You have to remember when you're making your mortgage payment, you're also having to pay property taxes, homeowners insurance, as well as sometimes mortgage interest or PMI, private mortgage insurance, mortgage insurance. And so those are additional costs. But what folks don't realize is that there are so many tax benefits for owning a home. And so when you're paying interest, when you're paying mortgage insurance, when you're paying property taxes, when you're paying homeowners insurance, this is money you're spending, but it's money you get to actually write off and to lower your tax liability. So that might be a bigger tax refund for you at the end of the year. But the other thing to think of too is a mortgage payment means that your monthly housing expense isn't going to go up. Rent historically goes up about anywhere between 4 to 6% every year. So, yes, if you're looking at it within right now, immediate term vacuum, sure, you can save a little bit more money each month renting in some markets. But if you're looking at a long term investment and investing in yourself, it's the same reason why you decide to go out to eat not as much so that you can put money into a 401k. Is you're putting money into a 401k not so that you can benefit now, so that you can benefit down the road. And that's what I think that's the way that I would encourage folks to look at it. And speaking of rental prices, they are skyrocketing. I mean, look at this from 2021 to 2022. You're seeing overall 17.1% increase in rent. And just want you all to know the higher interest rates go up for homes. That means you're going to have more and more people not able to buy a home, which means you're going to have a greater demand in the rental market, which means rent's going to continue to go up. So definitely keep that in mind when you're thinking about whether or not you want to continue to rent versus buy even their higher interest rate environment. Um, and this is the math part, Ashley. So can you walk us through this math example before I click to the next, before I click and show the next column of numbers?
Yeah, I'd love to. And actually, so Parker was just talking about the example of a 2,800 rental price versus like a $3,200 mortgage. And this example that we're about to show you is an example from a rental house that I own. It's a real life example. And it is, if you bought that same house for, I think we said $375,000, you'll see a little bit more on the next slide,
Huh?
or if you rented it, okay? So my renters right now are paying $2,600 a month plus their insurance, home renter's insurance.
Okay.
And so we'll see that in a minute. But here, if you bought that same house for $375,000 at today's interest rate of 7.5%,
Mm-hmm.
your monthly expenses after you add in your mortgage amount, the taxes and insurance, and even the repairs that you're going to now have to do because you own the home, not your landlord,
Mm-hmm.
that monthly expense is going to be about $27.70 a month. And
Okay.
what's so great about this, when you own a home, that never changes. And we'll show that in a
Yep.
graph on the next slide. But first, Parker, if you don't mind flipping, let's talk
Yep.
about if we were going to rent this house in that first year, same example, $2,600 a month. I'm paying $36 a month in home rental insurance. So my
Yep.
monthly payment is actually, $135 less per month than what it would be to buy that house.
Right. Right.
However, when you click 10 years later, and by the way, Parker had mentioned that the average rental increase per year is 4 to 6%. And we saw in that previous slide that in the past couple of years, they've gone up even exponentially,
Mm-hmm.
17%. Here in this example, we are saying, okay, let's say your landlord only raised your rent 2% a year.
So
That's
super
pretty much
conservative,
unheard of.
right? Yeah.
Yeah. But let's just say if you stayed in that house for 10 years, and we're going to look at a 4-year example in a minute too, because that's probably more realistic for you. But if you stayed in that house for 10 years, your rent each month at plus your insurance would be $31.50 a month on the 10th year. So
Wow.
you're paying almost $400 more a month for renting. And again,
Yeah.
remember, this is an increase of only 2% a year. So over 10 years, you would have spent a total of $346,000 versus
Yeah.
buying the house and having 336 coming out of your pocket. It's really interesting. Go to the next slide,
Yeah.
Parker. We can have a more visual view of this.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Oh, sorry. I double clicked. Okay.
Okay, so these are the same numbers, that 2770, I think,
Uh-huh.
or the black bars, and that number is never
So
going to
this is
change.
us. So this is us owning the home, right? In
Exactly.
terms of our this is our monthly mortgage payment, and it's staying stable for all 10 years. Okay.
Yep. And then the other one, 1 through 10 years, is going up. And so starting out, you're what did we say? About 300 and no, $130 less in the first year.
Right.
The
Yep.
next year, you're just a little bit less. Next year, by
Yep.
year 4, your rental payment at only a 2% increase
Right.
is more than what your monthly payment would be for your
So
house.
if we did market average and did closer to like that 4%, then you'd probably would be paying more in rent by year 3.
I
Um,
think actually when you and I modeled this out, it started happening in year 2. So
wow, that's crazy.
yeah. But flip to the next slide, because here's where we can really see what that difference is. So if you have an annual appreciation on your home that you have bought for $375,000,
And just so you know,
then
appreciation means the value of something going up.
yes. So how much more is your house worth after 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years? And again, I'm only using a 4-year number here because I think most likely if you were renting, you probably wouldn't stay somewhere more than 4 years. Things change with your family or life.
Right.
So I just wanted to use this as our example. So in just 4 years, or in just 1 year, your house has already appreciated, or the value has already gone up $15,000. Now, where I live, most of our homes are appreciating closer to 6, 7, 8, or 9% per year.
Yeah.
Again, we're being conservative just to kind of be more average for anyone who might be watching this. But Parker, look, after 4 years, your house has gone up in value
Crazy.
$64,000. So that's
Wow.
money that's going to
Crazy.
come back into your pocket when you sell it, if you
Yep.
buy. Go
Yeah.
to the next, or click the button, if you don't mind. Okay, so if you are renting, and remember, we're only looking at a 2% rent increase,
Super conservative.
super conservative. And we're still using that same 2770 monthly mortgage payment based on the $375,000 purchase price.
Okay. Okay.
Here you see kind of just, I just wanted to show out the difference in cash flow. So if you owned the house versus renting the house, if we look at that last column, you
Okay.
have literally only saved, I'm putting this in major quotation marks, saved $1,600 in your first year by renting.
Wow.
So that $1,600 though does not incorporate how much did your house just appreciate that year, Parker?
15,000.
Yeah. And it also, the tax write-offs you could have done for paying your mortgage and
You would almost certainly get that $1,600. You would get that back after you wrote off everything because the first year of your mortgage is when you're paying the most interest. And so you would actually get the biggest bang for your tax write-off buck that first year. So I bet that 1608 would you probably get that back anyway with tax write-offs.
it's pretty much netting a net zero kind of thing here. And then
Yeah.
so basically the point of this chart is to say, there's not really that big of a difference. If you've got the money for a down payment, even like we were talking about a 3.5% down payment, it is very likely more worth it to own the home than to rent it. But finally, we'll look at one more slide to see this in a visual again, instead of just looking at the numbers.
Yeah. All right.
Oh, you can
There you
pass
go.
that.
This is what
There
we're
we
trying to
go.
get
There
to.
we go. So here's our first year. And the only reason, by the way, that it looks like you would lose money your first year is it's saying if you sold your house after that first year
Right. Right. Yep. Which we
also.
wouldn't do unless
So
something crazy happened.
yeah, we're not selling our house unless something crazy happens.
Yep.
So if you bought a house and then you sold it at any point after that first year with these numbers that we're using, the 4% appreciation, assuming you're going to pay a realtor to sell your home,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
we you can see that you're going to make money by owning that home.
And look at
So
this crazy too, is like by year 10, I mean, that's like $200,000 that you're making. And this is taking into consideration, the fees that you would pay as the seller to the realtors. So this truly is like
exactly.
200K to almost $220,000 that's like free and clear cash in your pocket.
Exactly. And again, let's say you only stay there 4 years because now it's time for you to downsize or upsize, or you got to move for your job. Well, you now have $51,000 with this example that you can, and this is on a $375,000 house, by the way. So
Right, right,
those numbers change depending on the price of your home.
right.
But you've got $51,000 that you didn't have before that you can now put into your next home,
Yeah,
additional to what you already have as far as like that equity that's been building up, or your principal payments that you've already paid down on the mortgage
yeah. That's
for your
great.
down
This
payment.
is this is this is awesome. This
Yeah.
is really, really exciting. Um,
So
so here's the bottom line. Don't let the convenience, and I love that word because that really is the big draw. Don't let the convenience of renting fool you. While it may be nice to avoid the routine maintenance on your apartment, the trade-off that comes with it is steep. By renting, you're paying more for that convenience than you may ever know.
yeah.
Yep. Amen. All right. So now let's get to, hey, by the way, Ashley, usually I know I'm the one who's like breaking math down because I'm the mortgage guy. That was a master class. You did that was wonderful. So thank you for taking the math and just absolutely crushing it.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for helping me
Um,
put the math together.
yeah, yeah, of course. Okay, so now terms you should know. So this is key terms to know when you're actually buying a home. And just so y'all know too, there's going to be a handout. So if this goes over your head, then get the handout. Also set up a call with me or Ashley. Would be happy to go further in depth. So I'm going to burn through these and just give real quick kind of working definitions for each of these.
Sure.
Ashley, if that's okay. All right.
Sure.
So an appraisal, that's something that or me, the lender, will order. And all an appraisal is we are trying to figure out what is the fair market value of the home that you are buying. Okay. That's so that we're not over lending or giving you more money than the house is actually worth. That's what an appraisal is. Closing costs is it's the money associated with the closing of your loan. Closing a loan is a big, big legal deal. And so people need to be compensated for their hard work. Somebody's going to go to the attorney who's closing your loan, to the lender who helped negotiate and arrange the terms. And also, you're going to have to put some money into something called an escrow. It's like a little piggy bank where you set aside little by little enough money to pay your property taxes, enough money to pay your homeowner's insurance. Your credit score, that's going from TransUnion, Experian, and Equifax. Hopefully you know what your credit score is. If not, there are a lot of great websites that you can use to monitor it. And that really helps dictate how much money we can lend to you, the rate that you're going to get, so on and so forth. Your down payment, that's how much money you are bringing to the table to buy equity. That's a direct ownership share of the home. Your mortgage rate, that is the interest rate. That's how much money that you are paying over the life of the loan in order to actually own the home. Pre-approval letter, this is something that you get after you've submitted a complete application. It's a letter that I provide to you. You then give to your wonderful realtor, Ashley, and then that allows your realtor to go out on your behalf and actually offer on a home, make an offer on a home. An inspection contingency is where even though you're under contract, you say, hey, I need to have X amount of time to make sure that I'm buying a house that's structurally sound and safe. All right. You then have the term that you have affordability. Affordability is how much home can you buy versus how much home should you buy. And then equity, this is, okay, if my home is worth $100,000 and then I do a $10,000 down payment, that means when I get up from the closing table, I own 10% of my home, while the bank owns 90%. Well, obviously that percentage, that 10% of how much I own in that home, that's going to go up as the percentage of what the bank owns goes down. Every month we're making that payment and what we owe the bank is going to go down. But what's also happening, the value of your home is going up. So the value of your home goes up, the amount that you owe goes down. And as those magical things happen, your equity share, the amount of equity you own in your home, that increases. Okay. Ashley, am I good to keep burning through these? I know a lot of these are mortgage.
You're doing great.
Okay. Amortization. There's something called an amortization chart. Here's what you need to know. Remember, with your mortgage payment each month, it's not going to change. That being said, Ashley, if my mortgage is $2,000, all right, $2,000 a month. Payment one, year one. Out of that $2,000, like 1,900 might go to, this is very simplified terms, but 1,900 might go just to interest.
Yeah.
And only 100 is going to go towards principal, the amount that I owe. Now people are like, well, that's stupid. Well, there are a couple of things you need to know. One is making extra payments will actually help you pay way less on the life of the loan. But two, remember, there is a tax benefit. When you are making these payments early in your loan, you do get to write off more money on your taxes because you're paying technically more in interest. But here's what's really cool. So that was payment one, year one, right? Now let's go to year 15. All right. We've now owned our home for 15 years. We've made payments for 15 years. I'm still doing $2,000 a month, 2,000. Well, by year 15, 1,000 is going towards principal, lowering my loan, while the other 1,000 is going towards interest. You see what's happening as we go, it's called going down the amortization chart. As we own the home longer and we keep making the same payment, a greater proportion of that payment is going towards principal than it is to interest. So that is amortization. APR is the total cost of borrowing money. Your interest rate might be 6%, but let's say that you had to pay mortgage insurance, PMI, and you had to finance that mortgage insurance into your monthly payment, then the APR is going to be higher than your interest rate because you're financing more than just the principal and interest. So APR is just the total cost of borrowing money. Your escrow is that forced piggy bank we talked about. Your loan to value, remember that example of $100,000 home? I do a $10,000 down payment. My LTV is 90% because I own 10% of the equity. Once I get up from the closing table, other 90% owned by the bank. That's LTV. Mortgage insurance premium, that is the amount that you need to pay either once, annually, or monthly, depending on the terms you set with your lender. And that is essentially, it's a slight increase in your monthly payment because you don't have enough of an equity share yet. There are a lot of ways to get rid of mortgage insurance. Talk to me and I'll tell you how. Private mortgage insurance, your PMI, that's associated with FHA. That is a government insured loan, but it functions the exact same as mortgage insurance, it's just regulated differently. A rate lock is when you're under contract and you go ahead and freeze a moment in time. So let's say that we're under contract today and I do a rate lock. That means if rates go up, but before I close, I'm okay. I'm protected because the day that I locked is the day's pricing that I get. And last but not least, we have principal, interest, taxes, and insurance, PITI or pity. I pity the fool. That's how I remembered it for my mortgage license exam. Principal, that's how much you owe on your loan. Interest, how much of your payment's going to the bank. Taxes, how much is going into your escrow account to pay for your property taxes each year. And insurance, that's your homeowner's insurance to protect your home. And that is a very rapid fire, fast way of giving you a crash course in mortgage terms that you should know. How did I do, Ashley?
You did such a good job. I'm glad we have this recorded. I might make a song out of it for you later on.
I was inspired. I was inspired by all of your incredible mathing. I was like, all right, her math was so on point. I gotta step it up with my term defining.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, I will say, and just as a reminder, if that was too fast or if you want a little bit more information, feel free to give us a call. But also the handout that you should have received when you signed up for the webinar has these terms as well as with their definitions included.
Love it. Awesome. Okay, and now here's where we end. It's going to be a cliffhanger. The home buying process made easy. And I'm going to get rid of our faces here for a second. All right. Okay, so I don't think that we should read every single box, Ashley. It's an incentive for folks to download the handout and to go through. But this is a really comprehensive, comprehensive. This is a comprehensive step-by-step overview of the entire process from consultation all the way to you actually moving in.
Right.
So we're going to break up each track though. All right. So this is track one. Ashley, give us kind of a summary of what track one is really about, because it seems like it's starting with, I might want to buy a home, to being under contract.
Yeah, so this is actually a speed version of what it looks like to get under contract when you want to buy a home. But these are probably some of the most important steps. You do a consultation. Of course, you will have already met with your realtor. You've shared with them what you're looking for. Is this your dream home? Is this like a home you need to stick your next 4 children into? All of those things. And then you will consult with a loan officer like Parker, because we've got to determine what's the right kind of loan that for you based on your current goals and based on your current lifestyle or life part of life you're in.
Yeah,
like
the part of like the season of life, stage of life. Yeah.
Look at all those S words. I just couldn't think of it. Yes, so based on that. And once we know that, then he or she will be able to give you a pre-approval. And Parker talked about that, but it's going to be dependent on your credit score, your bank accounts, how much money you're going to put down, and all of these different things. So they'll work with you to give you a pre-approval. And it's really important to have that before you start house hunting.
Yes.
Because then, one, we know what you can afford and what you want to afford. But 2, the most important thing is that when you find the home that you want to make an offer on, you are setting yourself apart from many other potential home buyers, because the sellers of the home know that you've already been approved and you've already done the work that it takes, so they can feel confident that you can actually pay for their home. So as long as that offer is accepted, we go under contract, and then we go through some next few steps that we're about to talk about.
And one thing I want to add is, if you are someone watching this and you have actually started to work with a realtor before a lender, that is okay. That's actually very, very normal. So imagine if we cut out this puzzle piece and put it at the front. if somebody comes to you, Ashley, and they're like, I want to buy a home and they're not pre-approved, you're just going to send them to a lender, right? So don't freak out if,
100%.
yeah, like I can feel a client I'm working with right now who's like very type A, wants to have everything done perfectly. And if you're like that wonderful person I'm working with, I don't want you seeing this and be like, oh my gosh, I've already screwed up. You have not screwed up if you're working with a
No.
realtor first. They're just going to send you to a lender. So whether you're starting with the lender and go to the realtor, or starting with the realtor and going to the lender, the first three steps are all going to be the same.
Yeah, and I'll add to the reason for this. If you're working with a realtor who hasn't tried to get you pre-approved, please ask them to go ahead and do that. As a realtor, it is our job when we're helping buyers find homes, is we're helping the selling agent find a ready, willing, and able buyer. So I cannot do my job well if I don't. I know you're ready, I know you're willing, but I don't know that you're able. And I bring you to that seller and that seller's agent. I'm not doing my job well if I'm not doing that. So it will help your realtor do their job really well if you can get pre-approved before you do too much of the home search.
All said. Okay, let's go to our next track, and this is going to be me. We're actually going to be going from right to left here. So any remaining documents that we need, because pre-approval is like, hey, how much do you make? Who do you owe? Where do you work? Right? It's just me making sure that I'm verified your income, your credit, I verified how much money you've got, all of that. But then we go under contract. We actually need to complete the application. We then you'll do an inspection with your realtor. I will order the appraisal. Processing, they're like the gatekeeper between you, the borrower, and the underwriter who makes the final decision on whether or not we're going to give you money. I'll let you know that all lenders have something called AUS, an automated underwriting system. It's where we can put the entire loan together, run it through this system, and it will tell us whether or not an underwriter would approve it. Okay. So make sure you're working with a lender who provides for you the AUS results, stands for Automated Underwriting System Results. That way you can see with your own eyes that you've got a clean file that's been approved before you actually go to a human being. Then what we do is we've got, and I'm going to do half of this and then hand it over to you, Ashley, once we get the final walkthrough. You're then going to get homeowners insurance. That's not something you pay for out of pocket. It's rolled into your closing costs, and then each year it's paid for out of your escrow. You then get something called the clear to close. That's where the underwriter gives like two big thumbs up. I will then, in conjunction with you and your realtor, schedule the closing. Now, we already know when we're going to close because it's in the contract. But do we want to do it in the morning? Do we want to do it in the afternoon? Do we need to do a notary? Is it going to be a mail away? There's a lot to figure that out because you got to get everybody to the table. And then once we've got that scheduled, you're in Ashley's hands.
Yeah, so we have a scheduled closing time, 10 a.m. tomorrow. So of course we want to walk through that house one more time and make sure everything looks the way it did when you saw it the first time. Or if the current owners, who are not going to be owners for much longer, if you had asked them to make some improvements or changes, we're also doing that final walkthrough to make sure those things have been done. Assuming everything is good, we go tomorrow at 10 a.m. to the closing. Everyone signs their paperwork, depending on the type of, whether it's a cash closing or in this case, we're assuming we're getting a mortgage. It usually takes between 45 minutes and an hour to sign all the documents, have the attorneys send everything to Parker, make sure they've got all their paperwork they need, and then wire the funds in all the right places. So this is a really fun day for me and also for my clients. We try to work with attorneys who make it fun for our clients as well and make the experience just a memorable time. So you probably will also, while you're waiting for these documents to be scanned away, have some chocolates or treats and enjoy getting to know the other party. And
Awesome.
then now you own your house. You got the keys, you got them from the seller, and you get to go to your home and own it. It's awesome.
Celebrate. They have some champagne, some cookies.
Exactly.
Yep.
I try to do that at the closing table if possible,
Yep. Yep.
depending on the time of the day and who's there. And then something that your loan Parker and I both do and we really appreciate is asking for your survey. How did we work with you? What can we do better?
Yep.
What did you love about working with us? And then if you did love working with us and had a great experience, we really always appreciate referrals from you as well. It helps us with our business.
Awesome. Good. Nothing to add. Okay. Let me go ahead and I'm going to stop sharing my screen.
All right.
Okay. All right. Let's see if we have any questions. Questions. Here we go. Okay. Oh, got one for me, which is, do I have to put money into my escrow? That's a really good question. So yes and no. If you do a down payment that's less than 20%, you do have to have an escrow. If you make a 20% or more down payment, you can waive the escrow. Some people like to do that because they maybe have a lot of money saved up. But a lot of times I found actually that people request to not have an escrow because they just like how the monthly payment looks lower. But you have to
Mhm.
realize that if you don't have an escrow, sure, your monthly payment might be lower, but you better make sure you've got enough money saved up to pay your property taxes. If you don't pay your property taxes, the county that you're in, they will place a lien on your property, and then you're not going to own it free and clear. So my suggestion is, unless you just have a ton of money saved up, just do the escrow. Don't put yourself in a position to where you can't pay your property taxes. So that's a good question. All right, we
And
got
this way
one more. Go ahead. I'm
you
sorry,
also
Ashley.
don't have to you also don't have to remember to pay your property taxes,
Exactly.
right? You don't have to remember to pay your homeowner's insurance. It's just built in. Those people are getting paid. It's really wonderful that way. For me, I don't want to have to remember, so I like the
Yeah.
escrow accounts.
Here's a question for you, Ashley. Pretend like you're not a realtor and you're a first-time home buyer, but you also have all the knowledge that you have as a realtor.
Oh,
What are some
okay.
questions? What are some questions that a first-time home buyer should ask a realtor before making a decision?
Before making a decision to work with a realtor or to
Yeah, I would
buy the
assume to
home.
like make a decision to like, should I go with this realtor? Because if this is your first time buying a home, I mean, your first time probably working with a realtor.
Yeah, so actually, I have a lot of friends recently who bought their first home just in this past year or two. And they call me all the time with questions. And I'm like, why is your realtor not answering these questions? And of
Yeah.
course, I'm happy to. So I would say a big one is talk to them up front about what their process is for answering questions that you might have. And um, so I'm pretty direct and straightforward. So I'm not sure how I would have answered this before I saw my friends go through their own situations. But now I would say if that person doesn't answer your question with, first of all, there's no such thing as a dumb question. So make sure that you ask me
Right.
anything that comes to your mind, then they're probably not the person for you. Like if they're not thinking that you are thinking, I'm going to ask dumb questions, they
Mm,
might not be the best person if you don't want to feel like you're bothering them, because you shouldn't be bothering them.
right.
But I think some realtors just like are like, once they get the business, I've got my client, I'm just gonna help them find a home. They're not as concerned about making sure that they know that they'll get the client in the home, but they're not as concerned about getting their questions answered and making that person feel really good about the process along the way. That's probably
Yeah,
my
that's great.
biggest.
So
There's
essentially, what
other things.
if I just summarize it right, you're saying that if you're a first time home buyer and it's your first time working with a realtor, you kind of want to prioritize, since you don't really know what questions to ask, you want to really prioritize working with a realtor that's going to be very intentional in creating a relationship and a dynamic to where they're anticipate that, giving you information for questions that you should be asking, right? Or encouraging you to ask them questions. That's really interesting. I like that.
Yeah, and then the only other thing I would add, I mean, I'm sure are lots of things I would add, but the other main thing I would add is it's really important. I'm assuming if it's your first time, you're in like more of an entry level home or a maybe second level home, meaning the price points. There's more of these types of homes kind of everywhere that people are going to be moving into. And
Right.
so I feel like it's really important for your realtor to know the area that you want to live in really well.
Mm,
If they don't, so for example, if someone called and said, "Hey, Ashley, I want to buy a house in Peachtree Corners. I'm a first time home buyer." Well, I grew up in Peachtree Corners. I lived there for 20 years,
right.
but it's been 20 years. And I would most likely say, "Okay, awesome. I'm going to work with you. I'm going to help you. But I don't know that area as well as I should for you being a first time home buyer. So I'm going to find the realtor that I trust, who's on my team, who knows it, to work with you." And I think that's just like so important for especially
Yeah.
first time home buyers, any buyer, but especially first time home buyers, because as you mentioned at the beginning, like the community and where you are is going to really impact how you experience your home. And
Yeah.
you just want to make sure it's something that fits who you are and is best for you.
That's great. Thank you for your answer.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Um,
Well, go ahead, Ash. I'm sorry.
oh, I think you missed a question. I saw one come in like while you were going through the definitions.
Uh-huh.
Thankfully, I wrote it down. There was a question about how much longer are the mortgage interest rates going to go up?
Yeah. It depends on so many things. So let's talk about why they're going up. The Federal Reserve, they have their interest rate, and their interest rate is not the same thing as a mortgage interest rate. All right. What is the Federal Reserve's rate? Their rate is how much it costs for banks to borrow money. Okay. Um, and so the higher the Fed's interest rate is, the higher the Fed's interest rate is, the more expensive it is for banks and businesses to borrow money. So the Fed, they are raising their rate because they're trying to have inflation go down. They're trying to cool off the economy. They don't want a full-blown recession, but they want the economy to cool down so that wages have an opportunity to catch up and so that the cost of things, inflation, goes down. Well, they keep raising their rate and they're going to continue to raise their rate until we see inflation go down and the economy cool off. The good news is inflation is going down consistently. So that's good. But what's not happening, this is where they're really economists are scratching their head, is that the economy is not cooling off. Meaning there are a lot of reports. The big one is called the BLS. It's a jobs report. How many jobs did the economy add in a given month? And economists will say, for example, one came out today, which is why rates are actually going up today. Is economists said we are anticipating 156,000 jobs were added to the economy. So if the number comes in below that expectation, that means the economy is cooling down. And so that means the Fed would probably stop raising their rate. But what happened today, this morning, is not only did it come in over 156, it was double. It was 336,000 jobs were added to the economy, which just means that even though the rate keeps going up and it's more and more expensive for businesses to borrow money, they're still hiring, they're still adding jobs. And so what does that mean? That means that if the Fed lowered their rate or if the Fed stopped the rate hikes altogether, then an already strong economy would just heat right back up. And if it heats right back up, then inflation would go right back up. And all that progress we've made in lowering inflation would go away. So to answer your question, and this is kind of cold comfort, interest rates are probably not going to go down until we go into, it doesn't have to be a full-blown recession, but there's going to have to be a noticeable and significant cool down in the economy. And so we are seeing inflation go down. The last shoe to drop is going to be job reports. And the second the economy is not as strong is the second that the Fed will stop raising their rate. The second the Fed stops raising their rate, and mortgage-backed securities will, be popular again on Wall Street. So I don't know. So I guess the answer it succinctly is we got to wait for a recession. Cold
Yeah.
comfort. But here's my thing I would say. Even though rates are high, or not historically high, but higher, you have to realize that the higher interest rates go, the less demand there is on the buyer's side. But the value of homes is super strong because there's no inventory. There's not enough supply to meet demand, even though that demand has gone down. But you do realize, though, that you have to realize that the more buyer demand goes down, the more motivated sellers become. And so okay, if I bought a house 7 months ago, right? I probably would have had to have paid, maybe half of a point to get a 7% interest rate. Well, but I'm not going to be able to get any money from the seller for seller pay closing costs. Versus to get a 7% interest rate, I'm probably going to have to pay 2.5 points, meaning that interest rate's gotten a lot more expensive. But if I can get $10,000 from the seller, they can cover that increased cost in that rate. And so the question is, it's like, would sellers or are sellers giving more concessions or credits than they were 6, 7, 8 months ago when rates were like between a 6.5 and a 7? And the answer is yes. Like the higher rates go, the more the buyer demand will decrease. The more buyer demand decreases, the more motivated sellers will become. So it really is. It's more of a symbiotic relationship than people realize. That you can leverage higher rates to your advantage. Got to have a good realtor because the realtor's got to be the one who actually negotiates that for you.
And if you want to know a little bit more about that stuff that Parker just explained, I believe last month's webinar or the one right before that, we talked.
It was 2 months ago. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. We'll give like looking at all the numbers and math again, but it will give some great insight into how interest rates do impact, why they are the way they are, and then also how they impact decisions in buying or selling homes.
Love it. Awesome. Yeah. Well,
thank you.
Thank you so much, Ashley. I appreciate you. Happy first Friday. I'm going to go ahead and I think Missy and I are going to head out to hear some outdoor music at ACL and enjoy this beautiful weather.
Don't forget to put on sunscreen, Parker.
Yes, even though it's cool, I could still get burned.
Cool doesn't equal no UV rays.
That's right. Spoken like someone who spends a lot of time on the lake at all seasons.
Yeah, look how pale I am for being a lake person, but
you're going to live longer. So there you go.
Well, maybe I won't get skin cancer, but
that's right. Awesome. Yeah. Okay, Ashley, you have a great day. I'll talk to you soon.
All right, you too. Bye, Parker.
All right, bye.